knowing that there's been thought and intentionality about like what to put in this space to help communicate more about the culture of the area makes it just feel more comfortable and makes you kind of more quickly fall in love with the space.
What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host
Emmanuel Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Pani. What's up, B?
My brother, I love doing 2 shows in a day. It's good. And I also don't get to see you very often anymore. So I love that we get to do this. Something super cool that's been happening since this last couple of days is, as you know, end of the year, if you go on your Spotify, if you use your Spotify, it'll show you like the music that you listen to. And I've had a bunch of people tag me in, and I think you did as well, that we made a bunch of people's like top 2021 podcast. So first of all, if we made it for you too, and you want to tag us, I would love to see it. Just to say thank you, mostly from my perspective. I'm super humbled. There's so many people have chosen to listen to us. I sometimes don't want to listen to myself, but I do appreciate that people find value in our show and listen to it, and that we have been with you on so many car rides and workouts and so on and so forth. So just sharing some gratitude for all the people that are listening to us and taking actions, because I know a lot of people are doing that as well. So yeah, I just thought about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Cool. Yeah, I got tagged in a few of those. And
right? How cool is that?
Super grateful for everybody listening.
Yeah, I loved it. So,
and if you guys, again, like if there's certain topics that you want us to cover, let us know. I mean, the guests that we're going to introduce here in just a minute, you know, we connected, but a couple of people were sending us DMs about like, hey, it would be cool to get some guests from the guest perspective, somebody that stayed in a lot of short-term rentals. So that's who we're going to introduce in just a minute. Somebody that stayed in over 50 and lives, call it a nomadic lifestyle right now, which is super cool. And, you know, lessons learned from the guest side of the house that we can all learn from to implement to create a better guest experience. And a lot of stuff is probably going to be pretty simple, like some basic stuff that you need to do. And then we'll get into maybe some more of those wow factors. But yeah, man, super grateful. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Really appreciate it. And just share it with anybody else that's in the business or looking to get in the business. You know, we're trying to provide as much free value to you guys as possible. And also make sure, if you're looking to get started or if you're looking for some resources, we put together a free starter pack with some trainings on how to analyze markets and analyze deals and different checklists and all sorts of good stuff that we're updating regularly. And you can get access to that totally free. All you got to do is text the word resources to 978-242-0001. Again, that's just text the word resources to 978-242-0001. And obviously let us know your name. Like, we're actual people responding to these. So it's either myself or Mike Riley or JM, like we're all responding to these. So say, hi, this is so-and-so, just so we put a name to a face. But yeah, without further ado, man, let's get into today's episode. I'm really excited for this. It's from a unique perspective that we haven't covered before. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Today on the show, we've got Zach Busekrus. I hope I got that right. You can correct me in a second.
Yeah, it's Busekrus, actually, almost like a booze cruise. Yeah.
Okay, Busekrus. Okay. And him and his wife are the founders of Sponstayneous. They have a weekly newsletter that brings subscribers the best last-minute deals and upcoming steals on Airbnb. They're full-time digital nomads, and they've stayed in about 50 Airbnbs since last October. So within a year, they've stayed in 50 different Airbnbs. They've learned a thing or 10 about what separates the best stays from the rest of the pack, and they can riff off any of the following topics. 10 things they've learned after staying at 50 Airbnbs, a whole bunch of good stuff that we're going to get into today. So without further ado, Zach, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Love what you guys are doing. And yeah, just really honored to be here and share some stories, share some tips, and maybe a best practice or two.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys are basically living the dream that so many people that hit me up want to do, right? They're like, oh, I want to travel more and do all this stuff. And you guys are doing it. So kudos to you guys. So why don't you tell us how this all started? Like how long have you been doing this and what got you into this nomadic lifestyle?
Yeah, great question. So it really just started during COVID. My wife and I were both sort of, sent home like most of the world. And we were working from a 700 square foot apartment in downtown Washington, D.C., both on, Zoom calls. And it was just quite honestly, just a little bit of a cluster. And, we don't have kids yet. I don't know how people with kids were able to do it, but it just got to a point where it was too much. And so we said, look, like we need a bigger space. And then right around that time, both of our employers said, hey, indefinitely, we're going to be remote. So we thought, well, if we can work from anywhere, why don't we? So we got out of our lease and we hit the road. And we started, pretty close to home, just sort of the mid-Atlantic kind of New England area, and eventually worked up the courage to go, all the way to the West Coast and then back again. So yeah, we've been a fair number of places over the past year, and saw really just how different people, depending on where you were in the country, were responding to the pandemic. So it was a very, very just interesting moment to travel in. So real privilege for sure. And we've been so thankful for the hosts that have had us over the last 14 months now.
So you guys took that workation trend to a whole nother level.
We did. Yeah. And again, it was we couldn't have done it without hosts, right? And we just were so appreciative of people that went over and beyond to just make sure that we were comfortable. Again, we weren't, we were working the whole time, right? So it's not like we were on an extended vacation or a sabbatical. And hosts just did an exceptional job at like making sure we had good work from home setups and whatnot. So just very, very appreciative to the great people of Airbnb that made all of this possible.
So were you guys doing it by car?
We were, yeah.
So you did everything by car. So you were just going all around the country by car. You were just driving to.
Yeah. So what we would do is we'd try, this wasn't perfect, but we tried to arrive on a Sunday to a place and then leave on the following Saturday. So it was, almost a week in each place. Again, that wasn't perfect, but that's what we strove for. So we had a good, 5 solid days in any given area to at least get a little bit of a sense of the community, the culture, kind of what was happening. And then we spent most weekends, driving anywhere between 5 to, 15 hours a weekend, depending on, how far we were trying to get that week.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, that sounds so fun. Kind of fun, kind of daunting at the same time.
Yeah.
So were you guys like, how did you choose? So what's your favorite spot? Actually, that's the main question that I had after all this time. And do you have the same favorite spot, you and your wife, or is it 2 separate spots?
We do actually, which is funny because we don't agree on lots of things, but we do agree on our favorite stay thus far. And it was actually in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, which is, if you're not familiar with Maine, it's about an hour north of Portland, Maine, and then about 2 to 3 hours south of Bar Harbor, Maine. If people know Maine, they typically know like Portland or Bar Harbor. Boothbay Harbor is, more or less in the middle of the two towns, I should say. And the place was called the Sparrow's Nest. And we actually it was our second stay that we ever stayed in. And we loved it so much that we just went back this past October and stayed there, for 2 weeks, and it was remarkable. And really what made the place so special, it's a cottage, like a small 2-bedroom cottage on this beautiful property. The hosts live on site in a separate house, and Susie and Neil are their names. And they just, if there's anyone that should write the book on hospitality in the short-term rental space, it should be Susie. She's just remarkable in every way. And so not only were the surroundings just absolutely beautiful, it was like peak fall too, and fall in New England, right? What's there not to love? But it was really the care that they put into every detail of the home that made it just such an exceptional experience for us.
To make that more, I guess, actionable for the listeners, can you guys recall some of those details that were like, wow, this is amazing?
Yes. So right off the bat, I'm a big, more so than my wife, but we're both, coffee drinkers. We both appreciated when any stay had multiple ways to make your coffee, right? So some places you go and they've got a Keurig, or they've got an espresso, or they've got a auto drip, and that's great. It's especially great when you've got an espresso, a auto drip, and a French press, right? So everyone takes their coffee a little bit differently, and it's such a small, relatively like inexpensive thing to add to a space. But knowing that you're going to get to have your coffee in the way that you like your coffee prepared really just makes the stay that more enjoyable, that more really just comforting right off the bat. So Susie did an exceptional job. She had 3 different coffee makers, and I got my French press, and my wife got her pour over. So we were all good there. And beyond just coffee makers, one of the things Susie did really, really well is she paid attention to the details around, when it comes to investing in a space, unless you have oodles of money, you can't make everything perfect. But what Susie did was she thought, okay, what are the most important pieces of the home? And I'm going to invest a lot in that. So for example, the bed. She had an incredible bed. The sheets were these ridiculous linen sheets that were just incredibly comfortable. If you don't have a good night's sleep, right, like you're going to have a crappy experience, right? Like if you wake up tired because the bed wasn't comfortable or the sheets were scratchy, it's going to affect, like it or not, right, your experience of the place. So she knew where to invest. And then, when it came to some of the, lamps and other furnishings, she went a little bit cheaper, but they were still beautiful and nice. So she did a really good job of, I think, dissecting what are the things that are going to be most influential in whether or not the person has a good stay, and let me invest heavily there and save a little bit of money on the coffee mugs, for instance.
I love that. That's super actionable. And I think we had another guest on the show from the host perspective, our good friend Bill. Bill also did luxury properties, but he was also a big fan of putting different options for coffee, with Bill being a tea drinker, right? Like Bill doesn't even drink coffee. And so it's understanding that traveler kind of psychology. What I want to take us now, which is super interesting, with somebody that has been in 50 Airbnbs in a year, right? What makes you pick an Airbnb? So if we have a host now that is writing copy or choosing picture, right? Like, what does that look like for you guys? Because I assume, like, I only go to like people that are super host. Was that something that you guys did, or?
So yeah, we filtered in a couple of interesting ways. First and foremost, the way that we both approached, the way that my wife and I approached sort of the research behind where we wanted to stay was pretty different. So my wife would go and she'd, just Google top rated Airbnbs in New England, or like most beautiful places to stay in Southern California for short-term rentals. And she would take sort of like find a good blog, read an article, assume that it was a trusted source. And that's how she would kind of stumble upon a place. I started my search like on Airbnb directly, and would filter actually mostly the first thing that I would do is I'd find the general area we were trying to drive to. And then I would just use the map, and I'd scroll in on the map and I'd look for places that popped up more or less in sort of like our budget. And then from there, what I would do is I'd go and I'd click onto the actual stay. And the very first thing that I would do after looking at sort of the featured pictures is I'd go over to the reviews, and then I'd do Command F, and then I'd search for specific words, right? Like, kitchen, because I wanted to understand, yes, they have a full kitchen, but what do people say about the kitchen, right? Like oftentimes the amenities icons on Airbnb don't tell you, or any, short-term rental site, don't tell you enough about like am I going to be able to cook like a filet mignon in this kitchen, right? Like, or am I just going to have a couple of soup bowls, right? And that it can vary pretty dramatically. So we'd go over to the reviews, go Command F, and filter by specific amenities. It was also important to us that the Wi-Fi was really good because we're working, right? And so we'd search for Wi-Fi and see what are the guests, what are the reviews saying about the Wi-Fi or about the kitchen or about the sheets, quite frankly. So that's how we would go about our searches. And to answer your earlier question, I mean, you have to invest in professional photos. Like even if you've got like a 5-star, 350 reviews, but you have crappy photos, we just look the other way, quite frankly. And photos are this like relatively inexpensive thing that really does go a long way. And sometimes your iPhone might cut it, but if there's one kind of like takeaway, if anyone's not convinced yet, your reviews are very important. Obviously, the number of reviews are very important, but even if you've got lots of great reviews and a high quantity of reviews, but you've got crappy photos, that's going to deter at least guests like us from staying at your place.
Love it. I say that over and over. Like that's one of my favorite things to say to people is just like you should pay for reviews. So what are your top things that you look for in the sense of comfort that make your holiday, make your extended stay, I should say in your case, more special? So you've already kind of talked about like a comfortable bed, nice sheets. What else have you guys found there's like makes such a huge difference to your overall experience?
Yeah. So because we were, and we're living on Airbnb, so to speak, right? It's like having local, goods or a really well-designed host manual or a guest manual, I should say. But the places where you'd arrive and they'd have like local coffee from the shop down this street, or a bottle of wine from the wine shop a couple blocks away, whatever it might be. Being able to sort of incorporate aspects of the community into the space really just made it feel like you were actually home, right? Like this wasn't just a vacation. This was for us, right? This is where we were living for the next week. We're working and getting a sense for what the greater community of the place is. I think that's why people ultimately choose short-term rentals over like a hotel. Is you want to, I mean, this is so trite, I feel like to say now, but like you want an experience, right? Not just a place to sleep. So the host that went over and above to think about how can we creatively bring in the culture of this place into our homes, that immediately made us feel comfortable. And, beyond like wine and coffee, other examples of this are, there were some hosts that would feature like local artwork from, some artists in the town where you could buy a print, right? Or buy, there was a host that had plants actually that were for sale from, a local garden nearby. So things like that just are immediately like noticeable, and it immediately kind of elevates the space in your mind, even if the space isn't like designed, to the nines. Knowing that there's been thought and intentionality about like what to put in this space to help communicate more about the culture of the area makes it just feel more comfortable and makes you kind of more quickly fall in love with the space.
I want to flip it now on its head and talk about what were some of the worst experiences you have and how could those
I was going there next. I was so curious.
Yeah. We were really fortunate to have mostly really great stays. A couple of the stays that were, especially memorable in a bad way were actually spaces that were managed by, I think, traditional property management companies, where there wasn't as much, I guess, concern or care about being responsive. And so we, for instance, we were staying at this one place in Vermont, and there were mice in the place, and we had contacted the host on Airbnb, which was actually a management company, and we're trying to get help and have somebody come and fix the situation and or give us a refund for at least the cleaning fee. And it was this whole cluster. And the response times were just awful, like really, really, really awful. Now, again, things happen, right? Like we were in Vermont in the woods, like there's going to be a mouse every once in a while. That's okay. What's not okay is to not be responsive to your guest when there is a concern, right? Like when there is an issue. So response time really, really beyond just influencing, rankings on Airbnb or other short-term rentals. Once you're staying there, it really does matter, right? Like knowing that your host is going to respond within the hour and just say, hey, I've heard you. Here's how we're going to address the situation. That makes all the difference. We don't need a response time in 5 minutes, but like at least within the hour when you're staying there, when you first check in, that seems like a no-brainer. The other thing is, especially during a pandemic, make sure the place is clean, right? Like investing in a good, cleaning company, or if you clean the property yourself, really making sure that it's clean. There were a couple places where we'd show up and, we're paying a $150 cleaning fee or whatever it is, and the place just feels dirty. And that's annoying in any time of year, but especially when the whole world is kind of, living through COVID. It unfortunately, immediately puts this bad taste in your mouth about the space. So investing in really, really good, I don't know if this is just a Zach and Gabby thing, but also like having certain cleaning products out, like having a clean sponge that's like still in the wrapper, right before like near the sink, like game changer. Wouldn't think that would be such a big deal, but like don't leave a used sponge, next to the kitchen sink. Like that's just, sponges are really cheap, right? Like that's a small thing, but when you pick up a sponge to do your dish and it's dirty and it smells, again, it doesn't matter how nice your sink is, like it immediately puts this weird taste in your mouth for the space. And coupled with that, like the soaps too, like, there are a couple of really great brands out there that people associate with, being clean and being nice. They're not that expensive. Like invest in like a Method soap, right? Or a Myers, whatever it might be. Like small things like that really do go a long way in helping you feel more comfortable and at home in this space.
We were just talking about this earlier. He was harping on the cleaning thing because it's like once you notice one thing, you start to question
it. Messes up everything.
It does.
Like it does. Yeah, and like you can't get it. And the thing with me again, and I shared this in the last episode, so sorry, but I can't get out of my head. Like once I'm in that moment and I feel that something is not clean, I can't, like I'll sit in bed and I'll feel like something is like walking on my toes, and I'm like, and I know I'm like crazy because I know there's nothing, because I know there's nothing there because I checked the bed before getting into it, and I still feel it. So I'm like, question for you, super weird question maybe, but I think this is it's a long time of debate for the shower. Preference on the big things that you refill or the little hotel soap and shampoos?
Great question. I'm glad that you brought this up. I'm totally okay with the big things that you refill as long as you can't see through the bottle, right? So if you've got a bottle where it's, a glass, not a glass bottle, or like a black glass bottle or like a ceramic bottle where like you can't see through to see how much of the shampoo or conditioner or what have you has been used, totally fine. If you're not going to do that, then the mini shampoos and conditioners I think are the way to go. I know that for us, most of our favorite places that we stayed did have refillable soaps and shampoos. And the best ones had refillable soaps and shampoos in non-transparent bottles. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I've fought with owners on that before about like, oh, I'm just going to put out like a Pantene Pro V thing. I'm like, dude, I'll buy you the bottle, like a nice clean bottle that says shampoo. Like it just, that little touch, like that alone just goes a long way. right? Like it's such a small thing, but it just looks so much more professional. Not just like, oh, I'm staying,
100%.
I don't know, like in a hostel or something.
Yeah, no, it's gross. And people that do that is gross. And then like my personal like pet peeve is like, I don't know how clean it is. Like, I don't know if people put other stuff in there. I don't know if people put their own soap in there. So to me, it's always like, it just looks so much cleaner. And then again, like if you don't take good care of it, those little dispensers can easily look super dirty, super run down, rusted, all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, unless you have super tight cleaning procedures and a great cleaning team, go on Hospitality. I think I use hospitality.com on one of those websites, and I'll just buy a box with like 800 soaps, and then you just keep that because it's just easier and it looks cleaner, and sometimes the quality is better.
Yeah, and on the note of just bathrooms in general too, like invest in good towels, right? Like if you want to make your guests happy, like just pay the extra for the towels. Like go skimpy on like the bathroom rug or like, you know, a hand towel or whatever to make up for that. But like the actual bath towels, like that's pay a premium for that. It should be comfortable. It should be really, really, really clean. People should feel like they can actually dry themselves, right? After taking a shower. We've been in some places where it's like, you have to use like 2 towels just to dry yourself off effectively, and or like you're scratching yourself while you're using a towel, and it's just this weird unnecessary kind of like feeling of like you don't think twice about like how many people have probably used the towel until the towel like feels bad, and then you're like, ooh, not only does this, you know, feel uncomfortable, how many other people have like used this towel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So small thing there, but like invest in good towels.
I think the 2 key things, again, even if you have a shoestring budget that you touched on, which goes a long way, is the sheets, the mattress, and the towels.
Yeah.
Like get nice plush towels, nice soft sheets, because if anything else, like even some of the products that we've done that were a little more like budget friendly, the whole theme was clean, comfortable, affordable. So we put nice mattresses, nice linens, nice towels. Everything else was pretty bare bones, but like those go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note too of the bare bones, like I think that some people are worried about, you know, when it comes to the decor of the space, they almost feel like, oh, we got to stock it with like all this stuff, right? To, you know, make sure that people got everything that they need. And if you've got the you know, the resources and the budget for something like that, great, right? But if not, like we've stayed in some incredible places that were very like minimalist, like that did not have tons of stuff. They had one cast iron pan, right? Like one nice set of utensils. And like, again, it's just the 2 of us. So that's okay. But like, that was fine. Like we had no issue kind of washing the same couple dishes. It, you know, was so much better of an experience than some other places where we were at, where it was like, you couldn't even open a drawer because there was so much Tupperware in the space that it was like spilling out, right? Like, so I think that there's this misnomer that in order to set up a space well, you've got to have everything. You really don't. You just have to have enough. And you know, I would err on the side of like going a little bit more minimalist with sort of like how you furnish the space, rather than being in a situation where your Tupperware lids are spilling out all over the place when you open the drawer.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great advice, because I would almost kind of translate it into being like thoughtful, because like if you are actually thoughtful about what you put in there, is not so much the quantity, is the quality. And I am very similar. I assume you like to cook, just from that like, can I make a filet mignon at this Airbnb? Like that's a very specific kind of thing to worry about. But it's the thing of like, and I talked about this when I was in Europe, like, is there a can opener?
Yeah.
And then like how, or like, is there a bottle opener? And then just like how much did you think of me when you're designing the space if there is not a bottle opener? Like I'm coming on vacation in Spain. What do you expect me to drink water? Like what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's really funny. Did you say your wife's name was Gabby?
Gabby, yeah.
So is there stuff that you guys have seen that make you happy, specifically as you find something, you're like, oh my God, this makes this place amazing, and she finds something? For example, my wife loves the black of towels to remove the makeup, because she, as an Airbnb host, she feels bad when people don't have makeup removal towels or black towels. She's like, I don't want to ruin their towels. So did you find something that is specific, awesome for you, and then something that your wife found specifically good for her?
Yeah, I've got two things for each. So one for Gabby, yes, the black towels, awesome. I'm glad that you brought that up. Game changer, right? Better than just sort of like the disposable ones that you trash. And then two, for her, you know, the bed is always a big thing. Like what are the quality of the sheets, like, and like are they nice? Like she's very when it comes to bed, she really likes things to be like nice and clean. And if she even, you know, senses that there's like an alignment issue with the sheets, it kind of throws her in a little bit of a tizzy. But so she loves like good sheets. For me, two things. One, knives. Like having nice, like I like to cook, and so does my wife, but having like good knives to use to cut, like game changer. When you have like really dull knives, right, and you're trying to cut, like I actually just cut myself the other day. You can't even see it on my finger because it was a dull knife on cutting an onion, and it slipped off the onion and, you know, sliced my finger. And so like, again, when it comes to expenses, you don't have to go crazy. Like, I'm not saying you got to go buy Cutco knives, but like invest in some nicer knives, especially if you've got a nice kitchen and you know that people are going to be staying there for an extended period of time. You know, pet peeve is when you've got a beautiful kitchen, but then really crappy like cooking utensils. And it happens more often than you might think, right? And I loved what you said about the can opener, because I think if there's one kitchen utensil that the greatest number of Airbnbs that we stayed in did not have, it was a can opener. So if you're a host and you're listening to this and you don't have a can opener, like go look at your place and make sure you've got a can opener, because you use can openers more than you'd think. And it's, again, that and a lemon squeezer, actually, like any sort of citrus squeezer, are like the two most commonly left out utensils that, at least for those of us that cook, like I use that all the time.
Every day. And the knife thing, like the knife comment, like I hate that. Like that is something that, like, to the point that like I've started thinking about traveling with like a knife, like a thing, like, you know how the chef in the movies come and they have their own knife. Also the serial killers. So please envision me as a chef, not a serial killer, but like, you know, like the roll out of knives. And the spices, right? Like I love cooking with a lot of spices. And like, it's annoying when you go somewhere for just a little bit of time that they only have salt and pepper. Like I know I'm white, but I also use other spices that make food taste better. So people that just have salt and pepper, for me, is a big pet peeve. So like in Spain, I was traveling around with my own Ziploc full of spices, because that's just who I am, you know?
Because you're Italian.
But like we need spice, man. Like that's why we fought so hard and done so many wars over spice. People need spice. So where is the journey bringing you guys now? Like, are you still roaming around? Are you going back to DC, you said, right?
Yeah. So we have a place that's permanent-ish of a residence kind of in DC now, but we're still traveling about a couple weeks, 1 to 2 weeks a month. We're kind of in this interesting phase where we've grown our newsletter, we've grown our subscriber base, and now we've been invited by Airbnb hosts to come and check out their places, do a little bit of an audit of their place, and then also get them on our podcast, which is called Behind the Stays. And it's really, it's quite different than this podcast. It's a little bit more of just the story behind the place, like the story behind the hosts that brought the Airbnb to life. So right now we're actually literally right before we hopped on, I was interviewing the hosts of this beautiful Airbnb called the Bread Barn in Racine, I think I'm saying that right, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. And they just have an exceptional story. It's a beautiful farm in Southern Virginia. Anyways, all that is to say is that we do have a little bit of a more permanent-ish home for a couple of weeks out of the month. And then we're traveling around and trying to, bring the stories of these really cool spaces to life so that we can inspire other people to come and stay at these places as well.
I love that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I mean, let us know if you guys have recommendations of where to go. We're always looking for new places to check out.
Have you seen this super awesome one in like Joshua Tree? That it kind of looks like on the side, like it has a rock, like their bed has the rock behind it, and it's like glass. You know what I'm talking about? I see it on TikTok all the time.
Yeah, I feel like they're like every Joshua Airbnb is
Looks
like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Joshua Tree Airbnbs are ridiculous, but I think I know which one you're talking about actually.
Yeah.
And I think it normally goes for like, you know, 2 to 3K a night or something ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
that one is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And we were in Southern California for a couple months earlier this year, but we didn't make it out to Joshua Tree, which is one of my biggest regrets. So we'll have to make it out there soon. So if there's anyone listening that has a place in Joshua Tree and they want to invite us out, we'd welcome the invitation.
That's awesome.
I love it. Well, before we get into the last question, first, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for coming on here and sharing your journey with us. Again, I know this has been a hot topic that people have been asking about, to hear it from the guest standpoint, because E and I talk all the time about this stuff, but to hear it from somebody that stayed in this many properties, you know, you and your wife, like echoing a lot of the things that we're talking about, like it makes a huge difference. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing that. Where can folks learn more about you and the Sponstayneous newsletter and all that good stuff?
Yeah, no, and first and foremost, just thank you guys for the invitation. This is a blast. And if anyone listening to this wants, you know, more specific details too, I know that we just touched on some basic stuff, but happy to share other more nitty gritty, you know, ideas around how to make the space stand out, especially to, like, you know, when it comes to Airbnb or any short-term rentals, you know, you might be designing it for quick weekend travelers, but if you want to attract digital nomads, people that are going to actually be like living and working in a space for maybe a longer stay, got lots of ideas for how you might you know, better your home there. But if folks want to learn a little bit more about us, you can go to sponstayneous.com. So it's a little tricky. It's Sponstayneous, so a play on the word spontaneous. But sponstayneous.com is where you can sign up for the newsletter. And then if you're a short-term rental host and you want to be on our podcast, we'd love to interview you as well. So you can go to behindthestays.com and that'll take you to our podcast. But thank you both for everything that, you know, you're doing for this space. Love your guys' content. And I've learned a little bit, you know, being slightly newer to this space, kind of who the players are, and your guys' pod has been fun to listen to. So appreciate the invitation and thankful to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. And so the last question that we ask all of our guests, this will be a little bit different, but what would you say is, we always ask, what's your number one secret to success? But what would you say is a number one secret to success for short-term rental hosts?
Great question. I'm going to give one from the standpoint of a digital nomad, which is secret to success. If you're trying to attract this, you know, growing group of people who have flexibility in like where they work, think about investing in a cool nook that is a, you know, work from home setup. Like think about, you know, a dual monitor, right? Or a you know, Bluetooth keyboard or a mouse, right? Think about a cool lamp, right? You don't need to spend tons of money here, but you know, even a couple $100 like sit stand desk or something like that. Like find a way to build out a cool little nook where folks can work. If you're trying to attract a digital nomad type of audience, or you know, anyone that's able to, you know, stay a little bit longer. And then outside of digital nomad audience in particular, just a little bit more generally, I think one of the best things that you can do as a host is leave some very simple, doesn't need to be expensive, but some simple welcome gift, right? Like a little welcome gift and a little note immediately makes you feel like, okay, this isn't just a hotel, right? Or this isn't just, you know, my brother's couch. Like this is special. This is different. So if you can, a little welcome gift goes a long way.
Love that. Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you again so much for being here. Truly appreciate you. And we'll be in touch.
All right. Great. Well, thank you both. Keep doing what you're doing. Love the content and looking forward to seeing how you guys continue to grow.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
All right, take care.
Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.